Hello and welcome back, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning back in. This is the next reading in the lesson where we're going to be looking at analyzing voter behavior and increasing voter turnout with this proposal. Is this a good or a bad idea? This particular reading is from Upfront Scholastic, and in many ways it talks about voting by smartphone, whether or not it's a good or a bad idea. Please remember that for this reading, you are to answer the key concept questions that appear in the chart and then provide a personal explanation at the end using your own support and thoughts at the very bottom. So let's go and get started, and we shall begin right now. Is voting by smartphone a good or bad idea? In late January and early February, more than 1 million voters in the Seattle area had the opportunity to cast ballots with their smartphone in a local election. The vote, which was part of a pilot program to test voting by mobile device, was to fill an open seat on a county environmental conservation board. It was the largest trial yet of this new technology, which more districts would like to consider as they grapple with how to conduct primary elections without exposing citizens to the threat of the coronavirus at the polls. The head of a group working to increase voter turnout through mobile voting and an electronic voting security expert square off about whether more smartphone voting would be good for the country. So let's go ahead to the first side here from Yes, and let's begin. We use our phones for everything. Talking to friends, reading the news, doing our jobs, paying our bills, and so much more. So why not use them to vote too? Voter turnout is in the United States incredibly low compared with other countries. In 2018, only 53% of those eligible voted, and that was a record high for a modern midterm election. For local elections and presidential primaries, the turnout rate is substantially lower, closer to 20%. This is a huge problem because when so many Americans don't participate in elections, we don't see the policy changes we want. Turnout rates are low because there are too many obstacles to voting in the US. In March, about 1,000 people in Houston, Texas waited in line for 6 hours to cast their votes in the presidential primary. Many simply gave up and went home. Voters with physical disabilities often have a hard time getting to the polls. And this spring, we saw with the coronavirus pandemic how the risk of spreading a virus can make it dangerous to vote in person. So once again, to restate, smartphone voting can increase turnout by making it much easier to cast ballots. We need to make voting simpler, more accessible, and that's where smartphones come in. As of March, my organization has been involved with 9 successful pilot projects using smartphone voting in local and state elections. In 2019, Utah's oldest resident, a 107-year-old woman, was able to use a secure app on an iPad to vote in municipal elections from her home. Security is a big concern when it comes to mobile voting. That's why it's important to have government agencies such as the Department of Homeland Security and independent security firms continue to test this technology in local elections. We need to find vulnerabilities in advance so the security of large elections isn't compromised. Mobile voting should not replace traditional forms of voting, but it should be an option. If we want to increase participation in our democracy, we need to bring voting into the 21st century. And that was from Bradley Tusk, CEO and founder of Tusk Philanthropies. Let's go ahead on the next section and delve deeper. So here's the other side. No. It seems almost anything can be done with a smartphone app, so why not voting? Wouldn't it be better if we could conveniently vote with our phones? The answer from nearly every computer security expert is a resounding no. Our democracy's survival requires that citizens trust our elections, which are run by officials who control the process to ensure accurate results. No smartphone app is that reliable. A US presidential election is the biggest target in the world for hackers. Even if bug-free apps could be written, and they can't, it's foolish to expect that our election won't be attacked. No app can reliably verify a voter's identity. Voice or face authentication can be faked, and we don't want our elections determined by votes cast from Moscow and Beijing. Voting via smartphone app requires many layers of software and networking from multiple companies. Hacking only one of these would compromise or corrupt an entire election. So to restate here, no smartphone app is reliable enough to ensure accurate voting results. So those who support smartphone voting usually claim that turnout will go up if people could easily vote from their phones. But increasing turnout is important. We need all of our citizens involved in the political process. But several reliable studies have been conducted, and none include that smartphone voting improves turnout. We can improve our elections, we can improve turnout, we can improve trust in our elections. But listening to companies that are marketing software and not to those who know software and security is not the answer. Even with large companies that have a lot to lose, we often hear of hacks and data breaches of their software. If the big banks can't get security right, why should we expect elections to be any different? Computers can do amazing things, most of the time, but smartphone apps will invariably have security holes in them, and apps will fail, causing voters to distrust the results. A possible and unproven small gain in convenience is not worth the risk. And that was from Duncan Well, professor of computer science at the University of South Carolina. So now's the time where you come in. Remember that your goal is to fill out the chart by answering the key concept questions for both sides, and of course to provide your own opinion for what you believe and explaining why. Thank you very much for tuning in, and good luck with completing the rest of the lesson.